As I held my feverish little Tuan and stood in line at the pediatric emergency room, my phone suddenly began to vibrate furiously. The two words Guchin lit up on the screen, and I reflexively flipped the phone face down on my lap. The little one in my arms was burning hot. His cheeks flushed red, and he whimpered weakly, "Mommy, I want water." I fumbled in a panic to find the thermos in my bag when a commotion suddenly broke out ahead of me. Several security guards in black suits roughly shoved the crowd aside. The sound of leather shoes striking the tiled floor like a death knell. "Make way. Everyone. Make way." I clutched Tuan tighter and shrank back into the corner, only to see a pair of polished leather shoes stop in front of me. When I looked up and met Gu Chen's ice-cold eyes, my mind let out a sharp buzz. 3 years. He stood in a suit and tie in the emergency room, thick with the smell of disinfectant, looking like a business elite who had wandered onto the wrong set. His gaze swept over the child in my arms, and his pupils contracted sharply. This child. He's from my neighbor's family. I pressed Tuan's little face against my shoulder. His searing breath spilled across my neck. "President Gu, here to inspect the pediatrics ward." Guchin suddenly reached out to yank at the coat covering Tuan. I sidestepped to avoid him, and when his fingers brushed the back of the child's neck, he froze all at once. There was a crescent-shaped birthmark there, identical to the one on his collarbone. "Jianwan." His voice was so hoarse it was terrifying. "You'd better give me a clear explanation." Tuan suddenly started sobbing in my arms. "Mommy, I feel so bad." Gu Chen's expression cracked in an instant. 3 hours ago, when I sent my best friend a WeChat message, my hands were shaking. "How would Gu Chen know we were in B City?" "Lin Yu replied in seconds. "The emergency contact your son listed at the early education center is him. Didn't you check when the little ancestor wrote Dad Gu Chen?" My vision went dark. "When I divorced 3 years ago. I moved out in the middle of the night while 2 months pregnant, terrified that if Gu Chen found out, he'd force me to abort it. The Gu family wanted a daughter-in-law from a suitable match, not someone from an ordinary family like me." Now he stood blocking the entrance to the infusion room, his jawline carved sharp as if by a knife under the harsh white light. When the nurse came to give Tuan an injection, the little one cried so hard it sounded as if his heart were being torn apart. "Daddy, hold me." Gu Chen's entire body jolted. I hurriedly covered the child's mouth. "He's got a fever and is talking nonsense. I mistook you for someone else." Before I could finish speaking, Gu Chen had already grabbed me and pinned me against the wall. His fingertips were icy as he traced the faint ring mark on my ring finger. "Jianwan, you stole 3 years of my life." Tuan suddenly raised her tiny arm. "No bullying, Mommy." Gu Chen let go of me and knelt on one knee in front of the infusion chair. He reached out, as if to touch the child's hair, then stopped midway in the air. "You're Tuan. Her full name is Jiang Sigu." The word slipped out of me before I could think. The air froze in an instant. Adam's apple bobbing. Gu Chen suddenly draped his suit jacket over me. The scent of agarwood, still warm with his body heat, rushed over me. I heard him say through clenched teeth, "You're finished." After the 4 drip finished at 2 in the morning, Gu Chen insisted on holding the child. Tuan slept in his arms with his little face flushed red, and even unconsciously rubbed against his chest. "My car is downstairs." His tone brooked no argument. I stood still. "No need." "Jianwan." Gu Chen suddenly came close, his breath brushing my ear. "Are you going to walk on your own, or should I carry you?" In the end, I gave in, because in his sleep Tuan called out, "Daddy." Gu Chen's eyes turned red in an instant. It was the first time I had ever seen him lose his composure. In the back seat of the extended Bentley, he stared at the child's safety seat and suddenly laughed. "You prepared this long ago." "I bought it on sale at the supermarket." I lied. In truth, every time I passed a maternity and baby shop, I would imagine Gu Chen playing and messing around with the child. Now that he was really sitting beside me, my palms were sweating with nervousness. When the car stopped in front of a 5-star hotel, I immediately grew alert. What are we doing here? You and the child are living in that shabby old school district apartment, Guchin said, lifting Tuanchuan slightly higher in his arms. My son can't be made to suffer. The elevator took them straight to the penthouse suite, and he gently placed Tuan on the master bedroom's big bed. I turned to head for the guest room, only to be yanked into the study next door. Guchin locked the door from the inside and pinned me against the floor-to-ceiling window. The night view of B-City flowed beneath our feet as he spoke with a fierce edge to his voice. You've been hiding from me for 3 years. My back pressed tightly against the cold glass. When we got divorced, we agreed not to bother each other. That was before I knew you were pregnant. His voice suddenly rose, then immediately dropped again. Old Master was still forcing me on blind dates last week. And you'd let my son call someone else dad. I froze. What other person? The second entry under emergency contacts, Guchin said with a cold smile. That one named Zhou Yubai. So he had already looked up the kindergarten information. That's Yeye's husband, I said helplessly. Tuanchuan's godfather. Before I could finish speaking, Guchin suddenly kissed me. The kiss carried the taste of blood. I bit through his lip. In pain, he let go and brushed the blood from his mouth with his fingertip. Jiangwan. This isn't over. Tuan's crying came from the master bedroom, and we both rushed over at once. The child had his eyes shut tight as he sobbed. I want Daddy. Guchin immediately bent down and patted his chest. Daddy's here. My nose stung with tears. I had seen this scene in my dreams too many times. After Tuan had fallen into a deep sleep, Guchin suddenly wrapped his arms around me from behind. He rested his chin on the top of my hair and asked in a muffled voice, Why did you run back then? I stared at the unfallen tears clinging to Tuan's lashes. Your mother came to see me. I could feel his body go rigid all at once. She said the Gu family needed an heir with superior genes. I gave a bitter smile, and my medical report showed polycystic ovary syndrome. I wasn't likely to conceive. Guchin suddenly spun me around. So you ran off with my child. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the eastern sky had already begun to pale with the first light of dawn. The bloodshot veins in his eyes were starkly visible, and only then did I notice that he was still wearing his wedding ring on the ring finger of his right hand. Jiangwan. His thumb brushed the corner of my eye. This time, you won't get away. I hadn't expected Guchin to come straight to my home. After coming back from the hotel that day, I quickly contacted a real estate agent to look at some apartments, ready to run away again with Tuanchuan. But the moment I opened the door, I saw Guchin standing upright in a tailored suit at my entryway, carrying 2 boxes of Lego in his hand. Tuanchuan shot out from beside my leg in a whoosh. Daddy. Guchin bent down and lifted him up with one arm, while the other braced against the doorframe, blocking me in at the entrance. Moving. I tightened my grip on the keys in my hand. How did you find me here? He let out a soft chuckle, his gaze skimming over the cartoon stickers on the shoe cabinet. In all of B-City, only this neighborhood has the property management put up "Please keep your dog on a leash" signs at every front door. This man's observation skills were terrifying. Tuan wriggled in his arms like a twisted knot. Daddy, help me build Lego. Guchin handed the toy to him, then suddenly leaned close to my ear. Guess what I found out last night? A chill ran down my spine. Zhou Yubai, he said slowly, isn't Lin Yu's husband at all. Half an hour later, I sat on the sofa, uneasy as if sitting on pins and needles. Guchin was in the kitchen warming milk for Tuan, his movements so practiced it didn't seem like this was his first time here. My phone was vibrating wildly. It was a message from Lin Yu. It's over. It's over. Guchin has sent people to the law firm to dig into Senior Zhou's background. I bit my lip and replied, just say he's a senior from my college. The message had barely gone out before my phone was snatched away. Guchin glanced at the screen and let out a cold laugh. Senior. Childhood sweetheart. Or just a regular friend. I jumped up to grab the phone, but he smoothly wrapped an arm around my waist. Tuan Tuan came running over, clutching his Lego set. Our daddy and mommy playing hug time. Gu Chen didn't even blink. Yes. Mom misses dad too much. I stomped hard on his foot. That night, after coaxing Tuan Tuan to sleep, I found Gu Chen smoking on the balcony. Moonlight outlined the side of his face, and the wedding ring on his ring finger glimmered faintly. Quit for 3 years, I said, leaning against the doorframe. And now you're smoking again. He ground out the cigarette butt. It started after you left. The night wind lifted the hem of his shirt, revealing a ferocious scar at his waist. My breath caught. This is the car accident when I chased after you that day, he said flatly. My heart clenched hard. Back when I signed the divorce papers, I had thought he didn't care at all. Gu Chen suddenly turned and pinned me against the glass door. Jian Wan, you owe me an explanation. His breath carried a faint scent of tobacco. I turned my face away. Your mother was right. I really did. Bullshit. It was rare for him to curse. Do you know how I've spent these past 3 years? Suddenly, Tuan Tuan's crying came from downstairs. We both rushed into the bedroom and found the little one sitting on the bed, rubbing his eyes. I dreamed Daddy disappeared again. Gu Chen knelt by the bed on one knee, his voice so gentle it seemed almost unreal. Dad is here. I'll always be here. I looked at the two of them, so alike in profile, and my eyes burned hot. The next morning, the doorbell rang. I shuffled to the door with my hair sticking up like a bird's nest, only to wake up fully in an instant. Mrs. Gu was standing there in a custom-tailored suit, with 2 assistants behind her carrying boxes full of gift packages. I heard my grandson is sick. Her sharp gaze swept over the cartoon print on my pajamas. Tuanchuan rubbed his eyes as he came out of the bedroom. Grandma. Madame Gu's expression shifted instantly. She crouched down and opened her arms. Come here, darling. Let Grandma give you a hug. I instinctively stepped in front of the child, only to have Gu Chen wrap an arm around my shoulders from behind. Mom, you've frightened them. Mrs. Gu stood up and looked me over from head to toe. Looks like I've been meddling in something that's none of my business. The air froze in an instant. Tuan Tuan suddenly slipped his hand out of mine and ran up to Mrs. Gu, raising his little arms. Grandma, don't be mean to Mommy. Mrs. Gu froze. Gu Chen let out a low chuckle by my ear. As expected of my son, that afternoon, Gu Chen insisted on taking us to the amusement park. Tuan Tuan sat on his shoulders, munching cotton candy, so excited he flailed his arms and legs. I held up my phone to take pictures of them, when I was suddenly jostled by the crowd and stumbled. A strong arm wrapped around my waist. Watch your step. Gu Chen's voice came from above. I looked up at him, sunlight casting tiny golden shadows across his eyelashes. This moment was too beautiful, so beautiful it frightened me. Gu Chen, I asked softly, what exactly do you want? He lowered his head and kissed the top of my hair. To remarry. The music of the carousel suddenly grew louder, and Tuan Tuan called from afar. Mom, Dad, come quick. Gu Chen took my hand, interlacing our fingers. This time, don't even think about running away. When we got home that night, we found Mrs. Gu sitting in the living room. I looked over the medical report again. She said, handing me a document. The doctor back then misdiagnosed it. I flipped through the report in shock, my fingers trembling slightly. Gu Chen snatched the file from me and hurled it onto the coffee table. What's the point of bringing this up now? Yes, there is. Madame Gu stood up and suddenly bowed to me. I'm sorry. Caught off guard, I hurried to steady her, only to hear her say, next month is old Master Gu's 80th birthday. I hope you'll bring the child back to the Gu family. Gu Chen let out a cold laugh. So now you're admitting Tuanchuan, the bloodline of the Gu family, Madame Gu said, looking at the peacefully sleeping Tuanchuan, her gaze soft. Of course he should be brought back to his ancestors and his family line. Suddenly, A wave of nausea churned in my stomach. So in their eyes, only bloodline was worthy of love. When I was crouched in the bathroom retching, Guchin burst in. "What's wrong?" He patted my back. His voice taut. "Did you eat something bad?" I shook my head and took the cup of water he handed me to rinse my mouth. When I looked up, I saw in the mirror that his brows were tightly furrowed, his fingers unconsciously rubbing my shoulder. "Jiangwan," he suddenly said, stopping short. "When was your last period?" The water glass clattered into the sink. Half an hour later, when Guchin came back carrying a pharmacy bag, Tuanchuan was lying on the carpet putting together Lego. The little one looked up and asked, "Did Daddy buy candy?" "Bought it," Guchin said without changing expression as he took out a lollipop. "But you have to promise Daddy one thing first." "What is it?" "Sleep in the children's room tonight." I heard this exchange from the bedroom and nearly snapped the pregnancy test in half. Guchin pushed the door open and locked it behind him. He tore open the package as if disarming a bomb, his fingertips trembling slightly. "Maybe it's just a stomach bug." I took a step back. He grabbed my wrist hard. "Then what are you afraid of?" 5 minutes later, the two unmistakable lines on the pregnancy test froze the air. Guchin stared at those two lines, his expression as if he'd been struck by lightning. I slumped on the toilet lid, and in my mind flashed the medical report his mother had flung in front of me 3 years ago: polycystic ovary syndrome. Natural conception rate lower than 5. Twice. Guchin suddenly laughed out loud. "Jiangwan, you've gotten pregnant with my child twice." He dropped to one knee and took my hand, the wedding ring digging painfully into me. "Are you still going to run this time?" From outside came Tuanchuan's pounding on the door. "Mommy, I need to pee." Guchin quickly shoved the pregnancy test stick into his pocket, opened the door, and lifted his son into his arms. "Dad'll take you." Through the crack in the door, I saw the tips of his ears turn bright red, and he nearly walked in with the same hand and foot on the same side. Late at night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Guchin wrapped his arms around me from behind, his palm resting lightly over my lower abdomen. It was still as flat as ever, yet he held it as though it were something fragile. "Go to the hospital for a checkup tomorrow." His voice was hoarse. "Then move in with me." "No." His arms suddenly tightened. "Jiangwan." I turned to face him. 3 years ago, your mother said she was wrong." Guchin pressed his forehead against mine. "The doctor said she took someone else's report. Your real checkup shows you're healthier than anyone." Moonlight seeped through the gap in the curtains, falling across his trembling eyelashes. It struck me all at once these past 3 years. He had been regretting it too. The next morning, Mrs. Gu called via video chat. Tuan held up the tablet excitedly and shouted, "Grandma, I'm going to have a little sister." I spat out a mouthful of milk. Mrs. Gu on the screen was beautifully made up, but she couldn't hide her shock. "Really? When did this happen?" Guchin calmly pulled out a tissue and wiped my mouth. "Last night." You and Mrs. Gu stammered. "Old Master's birthday banquet has been moved up to this weekend." After the call ended, I grabbed Guchin by the collar. "You did that on purpose." He smiled and kissed the corner of my mouth. "Speed is of the essence." At the entrance to the hospital's obstetrics and gynecology department, Guchin was so tense he looked as if he were becoming a father for the first time. He paced back and forth with the registration slip clutched in his hand, drawing frequent glances from the other expectant mothers. A timid little girl asked softly, "Uncle, are you here to wait for a baby too?" Guchin crouched down to meet her eyes. I'm waiting for the second baby." Inside the ultrasound room, the doctor said with a smile, "The gestational sac is very healthy. About 6 weeks." I stared at the tiny bright spot on the screen, my nose tingling with tears. 3 years ago, when I went for my prenatal checkup alone, I never would have imagined there'd be a day like this. Guchin suddenly pulled out his phone. "Can I take a photo? I want to set it as my wallpaper." The doctor couldn't help laughing. First time being a dad. Second. He corrected proudly. But when my wife was pregnant for the first time, I wasn't there. His voice suddenly caught in his throat, and his fingers tightened around mine. On the way home, Guchin pulled the car to a stop in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Get out, he said, unfastening his seatbelt. While there aren't many people around right now, I gripped the handrail tightly. Are you crazy? Jiangwan. His gaze burned intensely. You want the second one to be an illegitimate child too. Tuanchuan bounced excitedly in the back seat. Are mommy and daddy taking me out to play? Guchin turned back to coax his son. We're taking you to take a family photo. 10 minutes later, we were standing in front of the red backdrop for the photo shoot. The photographer directed us. Sir. Smile a little. Ah. Yes, ma'am. Come a bit closer. The instant the flash went off, Guchin suddenly whispered in my ear. This time I'm locking the marriage certificate in the safe and swallowing the key. That evening, Guchin personally cooked a meal for a pregnant woman. Tuan sat in the high chair, swinging his little legs. Why is daddy feeding mommy grass? That's not grass, Guchin said, pushing the salad toward me. It's nutritional balance. I speared a piece of bitter chicory with my fork. When did you, Mr. Gu, learn to cook? After you left, he said lightly. I thought that if you ever came back. Before he could finish, the doorbell rang. Lin Yu rushed in, clutching 2 boxes of mother and baby supplies. Holy shit, you're really pregnant. Behind her followed a man wearing gold-rimmed glasses, none other than Zhou Yubai, the very man Guchen had investigated. Gu Chen's face darkened instantly, and the spatula clanged against the stove. Zhou Yubai adjusted his glasses. Mr. Gu, don't misunderstand. I'm here to deliver some documents. He took a folder out of his briefcase, the original copy of Jiangwan's medical examination report from that year. I stared in shock as I flipped open the file, only to see the name field in the corner deliberately obscured. That wasn't my name at all. Your mother bribed someone at the medical center back then, Zhou Yubai said calmly. It took me 3 years to find the evidence. Gu Chen's fists clenched with a cracking sound. Why didn't you say so sooner? Because Jiangwan begged me not to look for you, Zhou Yubai said with a bitter smile. She said she didn't want to see you put in a difficult position. Tuan suddenly ran over and wrapped his arms around my leg. Mommy, why are you crying? Guchen pulled me into his arms in one swift motion, his heart beating so fast it seemed ready to shatter his ribs. I'm sorry. His voice was hoarse beyond recognition. This time, let me be the one to chase you. After Zhou Yubai left, Guchen smoked half a pack of cigarettes on the balcony. I watched him through the glass door. Amid the curling smoke, his silhouette looked like a statue. Tuanchuan was lying on my lap, asking, Is daddy angry? No, I said, patting his little curls. Daddy is thinking about something. Guchen suddenly turned and pushed open the glass door, carrying the smell of smoke. He dropped to one knee in front of me. Jiangwan. Let's move back to a city. My fingers trembled. In a city was the headquarters of the Gu Group, the old Gu family estate, and the villa where we divorced. Why? He took my hand and pressed it against his face. I want to watch our second child be born every day. 3 days later, Guchen stood with Tuan and me in the VIP corridor of a city airport. Tuan pointed excitedly at the tarmac. Daddy, a big airplane. Guchen carried him over his shoulder. From now on, you can sit on it as many times as you want. Silently, I tightened my grip on the suitcase handle. 3 years ago, when I fled from here, all I had in my pocket was 200 yuan and a pregnancy test result. Guchen suddenly freed one hand and took mine. This time, it's different. His palm was scorching hot, ironing out every trace of my unease. Guchen didn't take us back to the villa. Instead, he went to the penthouse apartment in the city center. The moment I pushed open the door, I froze. Photos covered the wall of the living room. All of them of me and Tuan Tuan. Secretly taken by people he had sent over the past 3 years. At the amusement park. Outside the kindergarten gate. Even a side profile of me haggling at the market. You pervert. I grabbed a throw pillow and hurled it at him. Guchen didn't dodge or flinch. Better than you being heartless. Tuanchuan pointed at the biggest photo and cheered. Mommy is celebrating my birthday for me. In the photo. I was lowering my head to put a birthday hat on Tuanchuan. Tears still hanging at the corners of my eyes that day. He had made a wish and said, I want a daddy. Guchen wrapped his arms around me from behind. From now on, we'll be here for every birthday. The next morning, Guchen's phone started vibrating wildly. He glanced at the screen and shut it off directly. Old master wants to see his great-grandson. My hand paused as I spread jam on the toast. You still haven't told your family that we've remarried. I told them, he said with a cold laugh. That's why they're even more anxious. Tuanchuan suddenly raised his little hand. Sticky with jam. Are we going to see great-grandpa? I can wear a suit. Guchen handed him a wet tissue to wipe his hands. Let's accompany Mom to her prenatal checkup first today. Warmth stirred in my chest, compared with the cold loneliness of lying alone on the ultrasound table 3 years ago. Now even having someone remember my prenatal appointment date felt like a blessing. In the hospital corridor, Guchen was called away by a nurse to fill out some forms. I sat on a bench waiting for my number to be called, when I suddenly heard a familiar voice. Jian Wan. Looking up, I saw my high school classmate Suan walking toward me, arm in arm with a wealthy lady. Her gaze swept over my slightly protruding belly. I heard you and President Gu got divorced. The wealthy lady suddenly spoke. So this is the one who was kicked out after giving birth. Before I could say anything, Gu Chen's cold voice came from behind me. Mrs. Li, has your son's embezzlement case from last month been settled? The wealthy lady's face went ghostly white in an instant. Gu Chen stuffed the examination slip into my bag, then crouched down in front of everyone to tie my shoelaces. Wife, it's our turn. Su Wen's expression looked as though she had swallowed a lemon whole. By the time the prenatal checkup was over, it was already dusk. Guchen drove us to a lakeside restaurant. When we got out of the car, he suddenly took a bouquet of roses from the trunk. For you. To make up for it, I counted them 33 in all. 3 years and 3 months since the divorce, he said, lowering his head to kiss the crown of my hair. 1 flower a day still wouldn't be enough. Tuan Tuan bounced beside us. I want flowers too. As if by magic. Guchen drew a small sunflower from his suit pocket. This is the flower a man gives his mother. The sunset painted the lake in gold and crimson, and I clutched the flowers, suddenly choked with emotion. Guchen, chew, he said, pressing his index finger to my lips. Eat first. We'll talk when we get home. Halfway through dinner, Guchen's phone rang again. He glanced at the caller ID, his brows knitting tight. The old man's been sent to the hospital. I immediately set down my knife and fork. Is it serious? It's fake. He sneered. They just want to trick us into going back. Tuan Tuan tugged at his sleeve. If great-grandpa is sick, we should go see him. Guchen ruffled his son's hair. Then keep an eye on Mommy. Don't let her run off. I glared at him. What nonsense are you spouting in front of the child? He leaned in and whispered in my ear. Move back to the villa tonight. There's a nursery there. My ears burned. I'll think about it. The old Gu family residence was brightly lit. As soon as we stepped through the door, the butler came forward to greet us. Young master. The old master is waiting for you in the sunroom. Guchen tightened his grip on my hand. Address her as young madam. The butler's pupils shook with disbelief. You remarried. Tuanchuan suddenly slipped out of my hand and ran inside. Great-grandpa. I'm Tuanchuan. The parlor instantly descended into chaos. When I followed them inside, I saw a white-haired old man trembling as he crouched down and wrapped his arms around Tuan Tuan. tears streaming down his face. So much like Aiken when he was little. Mrs. Gu stood nearby. Her expression complicated as she glanced at me. Dad. This is Jiang Wan. The old man jerked his head up. Good child. Come here and let great-grandpa have a look at you. I took 2 steps forward, only to trip over the carpet. Guchen lunged over in a flash to steady me. And the old man's gaze immediately locked onto my stomach. This is again. The room fell silent. Guchen calmly smoothed the hem of my clothes. Just turned 2 months old. The old man suddenly bellowed with surprising vigor. Hurry and bring me that pair of Dragon and Phoenix bracelets. Guchen chuckled low in my ear. Told you he was faking it, didn't I? On the way back, Tuan slept soundly in the safety seat. Guchen drove with one hand, the other lacing his fingers through mine. How about we go take a look at the villa tomorrow? The nursery's been redone in the style you like. I stared at the neon lights streaming past outside the window. Guchen, your mother really accepted me. His fingers tightened slightly. Now she's more afraid you'll run off again, while waiting at a red light. He suddenly leaned over and kissed me. A horn sounded from behind, and he sat back as if nothing had happened. This time, no one can stop me. The streetlights flickered in and out, casting their light into the car, and I saw the thin, scattered glimmer of the wedding ring on his ring finger. The absurd divorce from 3 years ago finally came to a complete end at this moment. Gu Chen's villa was still the same as it had been 3 years ago. Even the wisteria trellis by the gate unchanged. Only a low railing had been added to the courtyard wall for fear I might climb over it and run away again. You're serious? I pointed at the railings. Gu Chen got out of the car, carrying the sleeping Tuan. It keeps out the honorable, not the knaves. He pushed open the iron gate with one hand. In the moonlight, a giant Lego castle stood on the lawn. Tuan murmured in his sleep. Daddy, build a rocket. Guchen lowered his head and kissed the top of his son's hair. We'll build it tomorrow. The bedsheets in the master bedroom had been changed to the pale lavender I liked. After Guchen carried Tuan into the children's room, he came back and found me standing in the walk-in closet. Lost in a daze, all the latest seasonal styles were arranged by color, with the price tags still untouched. I bought them every month, he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind, thinking that when you came back, you'd have something to wear. I felt a silk nightgown and suddenly blushed. Thighs. Is this also for me? He bit my earlobe. Wear it tonight. In the middle of the night, I was jolted awake by thunder and found the space beside me empty. Pushing open the nursery door, I saw Guchen sitting on the carpet, tucking the blanket around Tuan. The picture books the little one had kicked aside were scattered all over the floor. One of them was open to the page of I Am Why Dottie. Guchen gently stroked the words "My dad is a superhero" on the page. His gaze so soft it seemed almost unreal. I turned to leave, but he called after me. Come here. He pulled me over to the bay window, where the storm outside was coming down in sheets. That night you left. It rained this hard too, he said suddenly. By the time I got to the airport, the flight had already taken off. Lightning illuminated the scar on his profile, the mark left by that car crash. My throat tightened. Back then, the doctor said you might, even if I'd been crippled, I'd still have found you. He sneered. And in the end, you even used a fake name for your prenatal checkups. Raindrops pounded against the glass, like an echo of that night 3 years ago. The next morning, the doorbell woke us. Guchen threw on his robe and went to answer it. I heard Madame Gu's deliberately lowered voice. The old man asked me to bring over the pregnancy meal plan. Through the crack in the door, I saw that she was also holding a jewelry box in her hand. For Jiang Wan, she said, turning her face away unnaturally. The jade bracelet passed down in the Gu family to the eldest daughter-in-law. Guchen raised an eyebrow. Now you admit she's the eldest daughter-in-law? Madame Gu glared at him. She's about to have her second child. She suddenly spotted me standing in the hallway and awkwardly cleared her throat. during pregnancy. Don't eat cold or cooling foods. With that, she shoved the things into Gu Chen's hands and left, her high heels clicking sharply against the floor. At breakfast, Tuanchuan discovered the golden lock pendant in the jewelry box. Is it for me? He asked, holding up the lock pendant engraved with live a long life and reach 100 years. Gu Chen put a fried egg into my bowl. It's for your little sister. Tuanchuan's eyes lit up. It really is a little sister, Dad guessed. I patted his head. Though it might be a little brother. Gu Chen suddenly set down his coffee cup. I had a dream. His eyes fixed on my belly. A little girl in a pink dress with her hair tied up in tiny pigtails kept insisting I hold her. Tuan slapped the table excitedly. I want a little sister. Sunlight spilled in through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Under the table, Gu Chen hooked his foot around mine. So, wife, we need to work hard to make our son's wish come true. In the afternoon, Gu Chen insisted on taking us to the mall to buy baby supplies. In the pink section of the mother and baby store, he held up 2 little dresses and compared them. Which one looks better? I sighed helplessly. It's too early to buy these now. Not at all. He motioned for the shop assistant to wrap up the entire set. My daughter deserves the best. Tuan ran over clutching a plush toy even taller than he was. For my little sister. When they passed the baby boys section, Gu Chen didn't even slow down. I tugged at him. What if it's a boy? He frowned and thought for 3 seconds, then casually grabbed a blue onesie. It'll do. The clerk couldn't help but laugh. Your family must have a little princess. On the way home, Gu Chen received a call from the company. Yeah, the acquisition is on hold, he said, steering with one hand. I'm taking 6 months of paternity leave. I nearly choked on my water. Since when do you have paternity leave? Just set, he said without changing expression. A new Gu family rule. When we stopped at a red light, he suddenly leaned over and touched my belly. Sweetheart, kick daddy once. I swatted his hand away. It's only been 2 months, how could it move? In the back seat, Tuan suddenly parroted us. Little sister. Kick kick. Gu Chen laughed so hard he almost wrenched the steering wheel out of alignment and nearly ran a red light. After dinner, an unwelcome guest came to the villa. I looked at the finely made-up socialite standing outside the door, and faintly remembered her as the daughter of some prominent family. When she saw me in an apron, her expression looked as though she had swallowed a fly. Brother Chen. And this is... Gu Chen wrapped an arm around my waist. My wife. The socialite forced a smile. I heard you two got divorced. We got remarried. He cut her off. We even have a second child. After the other woman fled in embarrassment, I pinched his arm. A peach blossom you brought on yourself. The old man shoved her at me. He said aggrievedly. I didn't even add her on WeChat. Tuanchuan suddenly came running over, clutching the photo album. Daddy, look. You never used to smile. Inside the album were the group photos taken before the divorce. In every one, Gu Chen wore a stern expression. Let me smile for you now. He suddenly pounced on me and pinned me down on the sofa, tenderness filling the corners of his eyes and brows. I'll smile for a lifetime. Late at night, Gu Chen was in the study handling documents. When I carried the milk in, I found him watching the surveillance feed. The image on the screen was of the residential complex in B City where we had once lived. Still have people keeping an eye on it. I set the cup down. He pulled me onto his lap. Afraid you'd go back to get something you left behind. The screen switched to the surveillance camera in his office, where the secretary was sorting through files. I suddenly noticed the wedding ring on her ring finger. Secretary Lin got married. He kissed the back of my neck carelessly. You married the hacker who helped you forge your documents back then. I turned around in shock. You knew I was in B City all along. I only found out 3 months ago, he said, tightening his arms around me. That was just when Tuan filled you in as the emergency contact. Moonlight filtered through the sheer curtains, and in the faint sparkle in his eyes, he said, Jianwan. I've never been the kind of person who waits passively. While I was helping Tuan brush his teeth before bed, the little one suddenly asked, "Will Daddy disappear again?" Guchen happened to walk in just then and heard him. He picked up his son with one arm right away. "Unless the earth explodes." With his other hand, he took mine. "Come on. I'll show you something." In the attic, dozens of unopened gift boxes lay buried in dust, each marked with a date from the day we divorced onward. Birthdays, anniversaries, Christmas. His voice fell. "I just kept thinking you'd come back." I opened the nearest box, and inside was a key for the new house. He pressed his forehead against mine. "With a garden and a swing. For Tuanchuan and your little sister to play on." Outside the window, the river of stars shone brilliantly, and his steady heartbeat reached me. This time, neither of us would ever let go again. Guchen had started working from home. Every morning, he would sit in the study in a suit and tie, holding video meetings, while Tuan lay at his feet building blocks. One time, the camera had been left on, and the whole company heard a soft, babyish "Daddy, hold me." The next day, a child's table and chair had been added beside his desk. "Mr. Gu," I said, standing in the doorway with a fruit platter in hand, "your paternity leave sure is quite the distinctive one, isn't it?" He yanked me onto his lap in one swift motion. "Mrs. Gu has a complaint." A video call request suddenly popped up on the computer screen. He shut the laptop shut in a flash, but forgot to turn off the microphone. From the speaker came the special assistant's stifled laugh. "Mr. Gu, would you like me to cancel your 10 o'clock meeting?" On the weekend, when we went for the prenatal checkup, Guchen insisted on experiencing the expectant father course. As the doctor strapped the fake belly around his waist, Tuanchuan clapped his hands excitedly. "Is Daddy going to have a baby too?" "Daddy is experiencing how hard it is for Mommy," Guchen said, crouching down so his son could help tie the straps. "That way, you'll love Mommy even more in the future." 5 minutes into the lesson, he was already drenched in sweat. When he bent down to pick something up, the fake belly went thud and fell straight to the floor. "Honey," he said miserably, holding his lower back, "you walk around with this every day." I nibbled at the apple at an unhurried pace. "It's only 4 pounds. By the time 8 months rolls around." He suddenly pulled me into his arms, his chin brushing against the top of my head. "I'm sorry." The consultation room fell silent, even the doctor turning away to pretend to tidy up the instruments. On the way home, we passed a bridal shop, and Guchen suddenly hit the brakes. "Let's retake the wedding photos," he said, staring at the mermaid gown in the display window. "You didn't even smile in the last one." I thought back to our wedding 3 years ago. He had kept a cold face the entire time, while I forced a smile. "Then smile for you now," he said. And somewhere along the way he had taken out a ring box. "Jianwan, marry me again." The diamond refracted a rainbow in the sunlight, and Tuan cheered from the back seat. "Mom, hurry up and say yes." The shop assistants were pressed against the display window. Watching the commotion, my face flushed red as I held out my hand. "Fine. I'll reluctantly agree." On the day of the old man's 80th birthday, the Gu residence was decked out in brilliant lights and festive decorations. Dressed in the qipao Guchen had chosen for me, I was led by him into the banquet hall. The moment we entered, everyone's gaze fixed on my slightly protruding belly. "So this is the one who's forcing her way in with a child," a socialite murmured under her breath. Guchen shot him a cutting glance, and the other man immediately fell silent. The old man came over leaning on his cane and personally put the jade bracelet on my wrist. "Good child. You've been wronged." Tuanchuan, dressed in a little suit, presented him with a longevity peach. "Great-grandpa. May you live to be 100. The old man was so delighted he couldn't stop grinning and immediately announced the establishment of the Great-Grandson Education Fund. Halfway through the banquet, I went to the restroom, and when I came out, I was blocked by 3 society ladies. Mrs. Gu, what impressive tactics, said the red-lipped woman at the front, swaying her champagne glass. Divorced, with a child, and still managed to climb to the top. I rested a hand on my belly and smiled lightly. Second one already. Thanks for your concern. You think you can secure your position just by relying on a child? She suddenly stepped closer. Gu Chen's ex-girlfriend is coming back to the country tomorrow. What are you talking about? Gu Chen's voice came from behind. The woman with the red lips instantly changed expression. Congratulations, President Gu, on the birth of your son. My daughter, he corrected coldly, and my only ex is my wife, as he led me away. I looked back once the red-lipped woman's champagne glass lay shattered all over the floor. On the way home, Tuan Tuan was slumped all over the child's seat. Fast asleep, Gu Chen suddenly pulled the car over by the roadside. Wait for me 2 minutes. He ran into a 24-hour pharmacy and came back with his earlobes flushed bright red. I glanced at the folic acid and pregnant women's milk powder in the bag. We already have all this at home. I'm no tea buying this, he said in a low voice. The clerk said, during the 2nd trimester. It's fine to have a little. The streetlight spilled into the car. His Adam's apple bobbed. How many weeks did you say it was last time? I pinched his arm. Mr. Gu, your son is still in the back seat. Tuan Chuan suddenly murmured in his sleep. Little sister has to be good. Gu Chen laughed so hard his shoulders shook. This kid's a divine assist. In the middle of the night, I was jolted awake by the baby's movement and found Gu Chen pressed against my belly, talking to it. Little girl, I'm your dad, he said softly, his voice light as a feather. Your brother's already trouble enough. Be good and don't give mommy such a hard time. I rubbed my eyes. What are you doing in the middle of the night? He immediately helped me sit up. Are you hungry? There's bird's nest soup warming in the kitchen. When she went downstairs, she found the living room lit up. Mrs. Gu was in the kitchen cutting fruit. Mom. Gu Chen stood frozen in the doorway. Mrs. Gu set down the knife awkwardly. Pregnant women get hungry easily in the middle of the night. She hurriedly picked up her bag and left, her retreating figure looking a little flustered. I looked at the cut fruit platter on the kitchen counter, and suddenly my nose stung. The next morning, the doorbell rang again. This time it was the moving company, delivering a full 10 boxes of mother and baby supplies. Gu Chen opened the boxes, and inside were all pink baby clothes. Old master bought them, he said, lifting up a puffy little dress. Looks like the whole family has decided it's going to be a daughter. Tuan Tuan excitedly pulled on a little dress. I'll be a model for my little sister. I suddenly remembered something. Is your ex-girlfriend really coming back to the country? Gu Chen's hand, which had been opening a package, paused. What ex-girlfriend? The woman last night said so. He immediately pulled out his phone and dialed. Uncle Wang. Find out who was spreading rumors at the banquet last night. 3 minutes later, Mrs. Gu called. I was just testing her. Why are you being so fierce? Gu Chen turned on speakerphone so I could hear. Mom, if you keep causing trouble, you won't even get to see the second child. There was a few seconds of silence on the other end of the line. I've stewed some bird's nest soup. I'll have someone bring it over. After hanging up, Gu Chen pulled me into his arms. Mrs. Gu, are you reassured now? Sunlight filtered through the gauzy curtains, falling across the room full of tiny pink clothes. This time, our happiness would no longer be disturbed by anyone. By the 5th month of pregnancy, my belly was already very noticeable. Gu Chen began reciting the business plan to my belly every day, under the noble pretense that prenatal education has to start when they're young. Tuan Tuan copied her example, hugging a picture book and reading The 3 Little Pigs to his little sister. Mr. Gu, I said, lying on the sofa and eating grapes. What if it turns out to be a boy? Without even lifting his head, He kept reading the report. Then we'll have another one. I grabbed a throw pillow and hurled it at him. Do you think I'm a rabbit? He caught the pillow, then suddenly dropped to one knee in front of the sofa. Wifey. Actually, I secretly got a vasectomy. I was so shocked I dropped the grapes. When? The day after we remarried, he said, brushing a kiss over my fingertips. Every time I looked at the medical record from when you had a severe hemorrhage giving birth to Tuan Tuan, I'd have nightmares. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, falling upon his faintly trembling eyelashes. During the prenatal ultrasound, the doctor suddenly laughed. The baby's very active. On the screen, a tiny little bundle was kicking furiously. Guchen stared at the image, his throat bobbing. Is it a daughter? The doctor gave him a meaningful look. The law prohibits us from disclosing the baby's sex. Once outside, Guchen immediately called the dean. 5 minutes later, he came back with red-rimmed eyes. It really is a girl. I twisted his ear. That's a violation of the rules. He picked me up and spun me around in a circle. The Gu family just donated a children's hospital building. At the weekend family gathering, Mrs. Gu brought an explosive piece of news. The legendary ex-girlfriend had actually really come back to the country. Lin Yan is coming over to visit tomorrow, she said, deliberately raising her voice. She's an international pianist now. Guchen was cutting steak for Tuan Tuan when he heard this and set down his knife and fork. Mom, did you forget to bring your blood pressure medication? Mrs. Gu glared at him. Grandpa Lin Yan has been kind to our family. I set down my juice glass hard, and the glass table rattled with a sharp clink. Tuan Tuan suddenly raised his little spoon. Mommy, don't be angry, we'll be scared. The whole table fell silent. Guchen held back a laugh as he massaged my hand. Honey, with your current fighting power, you could split a durian open with one hand. The next day, Lin Yan really did come to our door. She was dressed in a white dress, and as soon as she stepped inside, she smiled at Guchen. Chen, long time no see. Guchen was crouched down, tying Tuan Tuan's shoelaces, not even lifting his head. Call me Mr. Gu. We're not that familiar. Lin Yan's smile froze on her face, and she turned to look at me. So this must be Miss Jiang. I heard you, Mrs. Gu, I corrected, resting a hand on my belly. I'm pregnant with the second one. Tuan Tuan suddenly wrapped both arms around my leg. Mommy, my little sister is kicking me. Lin Yan's face turned a mix of green and white. She didn't even drink her tea before taking her leave. Mrs. Gu saw her out and then came back, sighing helplessly. You too. Guchen opened his mobile banking app and showed her the transfer record. I just donated 5 million to Grandpa Lin's foundation. Is that enough to repay the favor? That night, while taking a shower, I discovered that stretch marks had quietly crept across my belly. Guchen came in holding the pregnancy cream and insisted on applying it for me himself. His fingertips were warm as he carefully avoided my navel. Wife, you're so beautiful. I frowned at the mirror. I look like a watermelon that's turned into a spirit. He suddenly lowered his head and kissed those lines. These are medals. Tuanchuan stood at the doorway, a small pillow. Daddy, I want to kiss my little sister too. Guchen lifted him up and gently placed him on my belly. Easy now. Don't press on Mom. The little one puckered his lips and leaned closer. Little sister, big brother will sing Twinkle, Twinkle little star for you. When I was 7 months pregnant, Guchen suddenly, all nervous and flustered, bought a whole set of home birthing equipment. Do you really have to go that far? I looked at the room full of medical devices. It's still a long way from the due date. He was testing the fetal monitor, practicing in advance. In the middle of the night, I suddenly cramped in my leg. When I startled awake, I found Guchen already sitting up, massaging my calf. Under the moonlight, his eyes were bright and clear. You've been awake the whole time. I couldn't sleep. His voice was hoarse. Afraid you'd go into labor all of a sudden. I was equal parts amused and exasperated. Second babies usually come faster. What you should be afraid of is not making it in time. His face went deathly pale in an instant. And the very next day he hired an obstetrician to stay in the house. When Lin Yu came to see me, she was startled by the whole spectacle. Gu Chen's gone insane. Hasn't he? Lying on my custom nursing bed and eating bird's nest soup. I said. He says this is called risk control. Fine. Lin Yu rolled her eyes. Back then he was the cold-faced king of hell, and now he's become a total henpecked husband. Gu Chen just happened to walk in carrying a fruit platter. Zhou Yubai's been mining in Africa lately. Do you need me to send a private jet to bring him back? Lin Yu sprang up and went after him, trying to hit him, and I watched with a smile as they turned the room into a chaotic mess. Suddenly, a wave of searing pain struck Gu Chen. I gripped the bedsheet. I think my water just broke. The entire villa was thrown into instant chaos. In the ambulance, Gu Chen held my hand, shaking so hard it was like a sieve. Breathe. Breathe with me. He was drenched in sweat. As if he were the one giving birth. Honey, don't be scared. I was in so much pain I kept digging my nails into his arm. Shut up. By the time we got to the hospital, the doctor examined me and frowned. You're dilating too fast. There isn't time for an epidural. Gu Chen's eyes turned red on the spot. Then we won't give birth. We'll do a section. Gu Chen. I grabbed his collar and roared. Calm down. A wave of intense contractions hit me, and the pain turned my vision black. In a haze, I heard Gu Chen crying out, Doctor, my wife can't be harmed. Save the adult. You must save the adult. The nurse could no longer stand it and kicked him out. In the delivery room, listening to Gu Chen's hysterical roaring from outside the door, I was suddenly filled with strength. By the third push, a loud, piercing cry rang out. Congratulations. It's a little princess. The doctor placed the wrinkled little bundle on my chest. The door was slammed open, and Gu Chen rushed in, nearly stumbling. He lunged to the bedside, kissed my forehead first, then the baby's, and finally buried his face in the crook of my neck. I felt warm tears slip into my collar. Wife, he said hoarsely, we're never having another one. The morning sun was just rising outside the window, shining down on the four of us. This time, at last, everything was complete. Gu Chen named our daughter Gu Nianwan, before the ink on the birth certificate had even dried. He snapped a photo and posted it on his Moments. My little sweetheart has arrived. The picture showed a tiny pink newborn and a photo of me in the hospital bed. Lin Yu exploded in the comments. Mr. Gu, has your account been hacked? 3 minutes later, Gu Chen posted a second update. Thank you, Mrs. Jiangwan, for blessing me with a daughter and a son. I lay in the hospital bed scrolling on my phone, laughing so hard my incision hurt. During my postpartum confinement, Gu Chen moved the company into the bedroom. At every morning meeting, the executives reported to the camera, with the background noise of a baby's cries and my hushed rebukes of keep it down. Once, while the finance director was in the middle of presenting crucial figures, Nian Nian suddenly burst into loud wails. Gu Chen didn't so much as change expression. Pause for a moment. My daughter is hungry. The executives on the full-screen conference call could only watch as their CEO skillfully mixed formula, changed a diaper, and finally shoved the bottle into my hands. Wife, the temperature is just right. The next day, the entire company received the infant care handbook. Tuanchuan adored his little sister so much that every day after school, the first thing he did was wash his hands so he could touch her. Mom, he asked worriedly, leaning over the side of the little bed. Why does little sister look like a baby monkey? Gu Chen was massaging my swollen feet when he looked up at that. You looked even more like one when you were born. I kicked him. Nonsense. Tuan Tuan was beautiful from the moment she was born. He caught my foot and kissed it once. Right. Like you. Sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains, and the little one in the crib suddenly broke into a wide grin. On the day of the full-month banquet, the DAU residence set up 30 tables. I wore the custom qipao Guchen had ordered for me and held Nian Nian as I accepted everyone's blessings. The old master beamed so broadly he could hardly close his mouth, and on the spot announced that he would give the family heirloom jade pendant to his great-granddaughter. Mrs. DAU held Tuan Tuan while greeting the guests, but her eyes kept drifting back toward me. Go on. Guchen whispered in my ear. Mom wants to hold Nian Nian but is too embarrassed to say so. When I handed the child over, Madame Gu's hands were trembling. His eyes are exactly like Wan Wan's. This was the first time she had called me Wan Wan. Partway through the banquet, I realized Guchen was gone. After searching the entire garden, I finally saw him hiding behind the rockery, making a phone call. Yes. Make it all pink. Wait. Add a carousel too. I quietly approached him. Mr. DAU, which little sweetheart are you ordering this for? He was so startled he even dropped his phone, and hurriedly pulled me into his arms. It's for Nian Nian's first birthday gift, a replica of the Disney castle. She's only a month old. Prepare in advance, he said with perfect confidence. My daughter, Gu Chen's daughter, deserves the very best. The night breeze brushed past, and he suddenly lowered his head to kiss me. Wife, thank you for giving me a home. I came home late at night, and both children were already asleep. Gu Chen insisted on washing my hair for me, his movements as gentle as if he were handling a treasure. As the foam slid down through my hair, he suddenly said, I've bought back that old house in B City. I froze. That was the little apartment we lived in when we were first married. It's been turned into a memorial, he said with a smile, rinsing the shampoo from his hair. Everything from the day we met is still there. I turned and wrapped my arms around him, my wet hair soaking through his shirt. Gu Chen, have I ever told you I love you? He was stunned for 2 seconds, then suddenly carried me out of the bathroom. Say it again. I love you. Not enough. He set me down in front of the dressing table and dug out my lipstick, writing on the mirror, Jiangwan loves Guchen 2023, 10:15. Say it once every day, he said fiercely, kissing me again. I'm going to cover an entire wall with it. The following spring, Guchen suddenly said he wanted to make up for our honeymoon. On the private jet, I held Nian Nian in my arms to feed her, while Tuan Tuan pressed against the window, gazing at the sea of clouds. When the flight attendant came to serve drinks, Guchen was still fumbling around, trying to mix the milk powder. Mr. DAU, I held back my laughter. Your domineering CEO persona has collapsed. He pinched my cheek with his milk powder-stained hand. Thanks to you. When we landed in the Maldives, the azure sea and sky were so beautiful it felt like a dream. Guchen held our daughter in one hand and our son in the other, then suddenly knelt down on one knee on the beach. Mrs. DAU, I'm proposing again. Amid the sound of the waves, Nian Nian suddenly burst into giggles, her little hand patting his face. Tuanchuan copied her and pulled out a Lego ring. Mommy marry daddy. The sunset stretched our shadows long enough to cover all the time that remained in our lives. On the day we headed back, Guchen mysteriously covered my eyes. When I opened my eyes, I was standing at the entrance of the B City Early Childhood Center 3 years ago. It was here that Tuan Tuan had filled in the wrong emergency contact. President Gu. My eyes stung. You brought me here to reminisce about the bitter and savor the sweet. He led the 2 children into the lobby, and a staff member immediately came up to greet us. Mr. DAU, everything has been prepared as you requested. Inside the classroom, an entire wall of photos from Tuan Tuan's first crawl to Nian Nian's full-month banquet, from our remarriage to a family trip. At the very center was a family portrait, with the words below it, thank you, mistakes, for making what was right possible. Guchen wrapped his arms around me from behind. Jiangwan, this time, let me spend my whole life chasing you. Outside the window, cherry blossoms drifted through the air, while two children played and frolicked on the carpet. So it turned out that the most beautiful love was never about being flawless, but about, after all the storms and countless passing sails, still choosing to take each other's hand,